Hi, good afternoon. I'm Paul Wheels from IoT North. Great to have you. Today's show, we're going to be talking about the steps in adopting IoT in manufacturing. IoT North, if you don't know, is an IoT community with over 5,600 members, ranging from developers and business owners with IoT solutions to business leaders and business people looking to learn and understand IoT more. And we're here to help with that. We have the IoT North Solutions Marketplace, which is iotnorth.uk/marketplace, where we have numerous IoT solutions for you to understand the value easily and connect with the provider of that service. This is a free service. If you'd like to list your IoT solution, simply go to the same URL, iotnorth.uk/marketplace, and you can add that in a clear and concise way, focusing on the value it adds, not necessarily about the technology that it utilizes. We also have the IoT North Forum, an open source, open space for anyone to post and connect with the IoT community. It's new. There's a few members on there already, but please do join, engage, ask questions, and as we grow and build, it'll become more and more fulfilling. I'm really pleased to announce that DigiKey will be sponsoring the forum from August and listing some fantastic new content they've been putting together over the past few months. So please do register to connect with that. You can find that at forum.iotnorth.uk, and I'll share those URLs throughout the show. So with the show, we love engagement. We love for you to join us in the conversation. So with doing that, simply just comment in the box on whichever platform you're on, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, or Twitter. And we'll respond live to your questions. So today, or statements, if you've got anything to share, if you disagree with what we're talking about or our suggestions, then we'd love to hear that as well and have the conversation. So today we have Ian Gardner from IBM. Hi, Ian. How are you doing?
Hi, Paul. Good, thanks. Warm. It's very warm today.
Yeah, we can't complain about that because we're in the UK, and let's be honest, it'll be freezing next week. Would you like to do a little bit of intro on yourself? Ian, you've been on here numerous times, but there may be some viewers that we haven't had on here before. So would you like to do a little intro?
So, hi, everyone. My name's Ian Gardner. I work for IBM. I've been involved in IT for too many years now, but more recently, for about 6-7 years now, I've been involved in Industry 4.0 projects, namely the Mega M4 project, which was the reference project for the UK Made Smarter report. I'm currently working on the UK 5G manufacturing testbed, but also exploring traceability solutions as well, using blockchain and IBM's Food Trust solution. That's me.
Awesome. Thanks very much for joining us. Really like to, we've done a number of shows together here on IoT North, but others as well. And your insights are always absolutely phenomenal. So really pleased to have you on the show with us today. Thank you. We also have Mr. Gill, Andrew Gill from Waterstons. Some of you may have seen him on shows previously as well. Andrew, would you like to do a little intro?
Hi, sure. Thanks, Paul. Thanks for having me along. Yeah, I'm Andrew Gill. I work at Waterstons. For those who don't know us, we're an IT business consultancy based out of Durham. We also have offices in London, Sydney, Australia now, excitingly, and Glasgow. We've been working with clients for 30 years now, and I guess being kind of Durham based, the kind of client base we have primarily originally was manufacturing and supply chain, and I suppose it's expanded significantly since then. But it's meant that we've grew up with manufacturing. And I guess the opportunity that technology brings to sort of help manufacturers be better in many ways. Now, clearly, IoT is one of those tools on the shelf. But no, interested to join the discussions today to talk more broadly about maybe where you start with something like IoT.
Excellent. And yeah, that's exactly what I'm going to be talking about, the first steps and how we can sort of move through this. There's been a number of proof of concepts and stuff that have been going over the years. Manufacturing, from the reports and from feedback that we are seeing, there's definitely been a bit of an acceleration, potentially due to the impact of the pandemic. So, we're going to be discussing about some tips on that. Also, the adoption of IoT, bringing together IT, OT infrastructure that can help bring further value in spaces that haven't been used in connecting that technology before. As I said, if you have any thoughts, feedback, or just to say hi like Benjamin has, then please do that in comments and we'll pop that on the screen and give you some feedback. So, Andrew, initially with you, what are the first steps to adopt IoT in the manufacturing space? Because you've been doing quite a lot of research on this recently, haven't you?
Yeah, and I think, set the context a little bit, I think IoT itself is an acronym, so I think sometimes the jargon can get in the way of some really good ideas. it can feel a little bit like, maybe the hammer looking for a nail. So, it's not the answer to every single problem your business faces, particularly in manufacturing. But, ultimately, if you peel away all them layers, is connecting stuff up better so that you can get some better data out of it, or maybe make your product a little bit better, maybe get some new opportunity there, then let's think about whether IoT plays a part in that. So I mean, where you would start with something like that, I think it starts really just with a mindset shift, really. So when you face a problem or you're looking at a particular opportunity in the market, you're thinking, right, how might technology help with that? That digital mindset, I think, is so key. You're walking around your factory floor and you're thinking, actually, that just looks really labor intensive, or there's a part of the process that's just slowing down. What could we do better? You just train yourself to sort of take that mindset of, I wonder if technology might help with this. It doesn't mean big systems. It might just mean something really modest that could just be quite useful. So yeah, start small, I think.
I think you raise an interesting point there as well, Andrew, which is really all about the culture of the organization. It's digital mindset, and if the culture's not ready, you're going to have challenges.
Sure, and I think it starts with it does start with the leadership, actually, in terms of setting them examples and being prepared to take some of those risks. I think it doesn't need to be threatening. I think we'll get onto that a little bit later on in our discussions. But yeah, I think understanding where those pain points are, as well as understanding potentially where your customers' pain points are as well. I think that's key with IoT as well. What are their challenges? How are they deploying their products? Your product, sorry. And what else could you be doing to help?
Yeah, and so let's think about it this way. Okay, we've identified that there's inefficiencies in the production belt, which is a common one. Maybe say, for example, fault detection. So how would you recommend? Ian, we'll go to you first. How would you recommend the assessment of the different technologies that are available? For example, using vision as a sensor, or using sensors across the production line. How would you sort of consider suggesting to your customers on what's the best way to assess what's the best one to try first?
I'd take a step back from that, to be honest. And I'm a strong believer that usually it's the people on the coalface that know the best solutions, and often we follow our gut feel. We think there's a problem when reality is that the issues exist elsewhere. So what I'd look at is taking a step back to look at some empathy mapping, persona mapping around people's operations to see whether or not there are any kind of quick wins, and that could be around a particular process for example, that particular belt or a production line. But whether it's a visual solution or a sensor-based solution, that really depends on what that challenge is. So the interesting thing with visual solutions, visual recognition, is that it's pretty easy to set up, particularly AI-based visual recognition, where you can train models and whatever. You don't need so much data. Once you've trained your models, they're going. But when you start looking at sensor data by real IoT data-driven solutions, where predictive analytics, maybe cognitive solutions, you need a lot of data. So you might find there's some latency there before you can get a solution. But just take a step back, start looking at design thinking type techniques to identify issues, but understand as well that the reason why we look at IoT is to gather data, but it's what we do with that data that's the value point. So no, I'd take a step back.
Interesting. Andrew?
Sure. Just on that data point that you made there, I think so often that whole concept of better data and better insights can seem really, really hard to achieve, and seem like something that involves vast amounts of data. It does, but it also could just be moving from sort of a gut-based decision-making process of we think that saw blade might fail next week. Why? Because, well, they typically do about now. To try and turn that into what data points might we already have, or what could we, as you say, what could we point at it to monitor its heat or something of the blade? There's just bits there where you could just tweak those gut-based decision making into something that's more data-driven, that doesn't necessarily need the sort of the vast rows and rows and rows of data. You just kind of tweaking these bits of decision points, and you go, oh, actually, we can get another week out of that blade if we've actually looked at when we're getting these faults. We're kind of looking at maybe hours in use rather than just time. Simple stuff, I suppose, but you might even be doing it in a spreadsheet for the first few months. But I suppose it's just that shift of mindset, I guess, that I go back to around saying, is there some data we could use to make this, or is there any correlations here? Or if we don't have it, what might we point at this thing to get it?
But we need to think about the foundations as well. When we start on this journey, there has to be certain fundamentals in place. So what's the strategy? Where's that data going to go? Is it going to be in the cloud? Is it on premise? What are the non-functional requirements, the performance characteristics, the security characteristics, as to, when you start bolting sensors or whatever to your machines, what's the policy on that? How do you know that that's not opening a window into your wider systems? So there's lots of things that you need to think about, before you start adding any IoT to your systems.
Yeah, it's a common thing that comes up around the security side of things, and I think from experience of doing the digital experiments as a first stage of connecting things and having it completely standalone and away from the existing infrastructure, so then it doesn't open up any risks on that side, that it is collecting the data initially from external sources rather than a direct source. Would that help with the adoption of it, of sort of making sure that you're not going to have that policy and process that could inhibit the adoption?
I'll pick that up if sorry, go on.
Yeah, sure. No, for sure.
No, I was just going to say, I think key to all this is not forgetting the cybersecurity component. I would say, you can't just sort of carte blanche bodge your way through some sort of, SCADA type replacement system. That's not going to work. That's clearly going to undermine your entire resilience as a business. That's a really bad idea. I think it's about picking these opportunities off. You shouldn't be targeting safety critical stuff in your first pass. You shouldn't be targeting control of machinery and putting life and limb next to a robot and just trying something out. That's not really what this is about. I think there are some very safe experiments that you could consider where it isn't safety critical, where you can do it in a very passive way that does remain isolated from your business operations, and you almost run it as a little bit of a an experiment, as you describe, which I think you can kind of control an experiment far easier than you can adopt it into your entire process. So yeah, I wouldn't be advocating baking all this stuff in for your process resilience perspective as well as from your security perspective. But I think these experiments, there's no harm in doing these experiments and having somebody that understands that security concern with you on the journey and kind of asking you some good questions and keeping you honest. Yeah. But I think that for me, it's kind of where you're targeting this stuff.
No, and I agree completely. And it's almost like we're moving to policy-driven architectures, where you know the critical systems, what you can, what can be attached, where the data can go. For example, if you're in defence, if you've got ITAR, compliant systems, where the data can go. So as long as you know the rules, then you should be fine. But develop those policies, develop the strategies to protect it, because people need to embrace IoT if they're going to move forward in manufacturing. So, but we can't be naive. We've got to be educated and understand the consequences. So accept it, protect it, and move on.
Yeah, we've got a couple of statements and comments come through here, so let's just have a quick reflection on these. So Benjamin, thanks Benjamin. Does this suggest that more needs to be done at the level of requirements, design, policy, and specifications? Ian?
Definitely. I think you can get quite excited about getting data by adding sensors to things, but what's the point?
Yeah.
You need to think about the requirements, non-functional requirements. How many times do I talk to people and say, "What are they?" No consideration at all. They'll get excited by the functional requirements, which is what something does, but the rules as to how it does it or the constraints need to be considered. So these are the foundations that people need to rely on to move forward, and then you're going to be in a much better place as you start expanding these capabilities.
Yeah, we've got some comments here from Prasad as well. Hi Prasad. IoT sensors deliver data immediately upon placement, but will require time to gather and assess the data and use it within the context of a specific environment. So return of investment on these sensors will take place after some time, maybe not immediately. What are your thoughts on how businesses are making the decisions whether to install sensors? Andrew?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Prasad. Good question there. I think it does cite back to that start small. So you need to sort of demonstrate. It's a bit of a catch-22 there, isn't it, in terms of having some data insights that give you that early feel of, we think there might be something in this. And where you draw that line will be probably specific to the context of the organization that you're talking about. You're going to need a leap of faith and some sort of early, let's just try this. You're going to need that to be said at some point. But you don't need to go all out big bang initially. So, get the minimum viable product in there or whatever it might be, the proof of concept. Start to get a feel for if this thing's got legs, if there's potentially some hidden insight in there. And then I guess you could scale from that quite easily then, because you've got that that culture sort of building. Just on that point as well, around the customer side of things, I guess a customer advocate is probably worth tenfold an internal one. So, if you're starting to see some of that insight in the way that your product might be augmented by some sort of IoT or data-based servitization type of a model, having a customer on side that immediately sees the value and is willing to pay more for that value, that's also going to clearly help that internal case as to whether you're sort of trying to generate an internal business case or something, or whether you're saying, look, clients are out there, they're seeing value in this thing, we'd be mad not to go after it and sort of grow with that demand. So I think, yeah, for me, there's the internal leap of faith for a small proof of concept perhaps, and then there's the the customer advocate, the building the interest, building the demand for it that sort of pulls it out of your organization.
Yeah. Just to add addition, it's not on the list of the questions that we had, but just thinking about this, are we at the point of adoption of IoT where actually customers are starting to see they have a problem? They're starting to think actually IoT could probably help this and let's Internet of Things as an architecture, technical architecture of bringing additions into other architectures. Are they actually looking more for solutions or doing proof of concepts and MVPs? Ian?
I think it's a terrible situation in that the last few years we've been in a position of what we class as pilot purgatory, where it's all minimum viable products, it's all kind of pilots and proof of concepts, but it's almost like people have been playing. But I think we're starting to move beyond that now, where companies are starting to understand why they need to explore down these areas, and there's lots of reasons why people are going down these pilots. It's probably 60-70% of the infrastructure that's in an average manufacturer where wanting to sensorize or digitize a particular machine. They are fantastic machines, but they're kind of quite old. The legacy kit is not digital, so we need to digitize it. So I think there's a bit of a gap, but I think the maturity level's rising, and we're starting to see people understand that the data is where the value is. It's not the IoT. The IoT just gets the data. It's the data where the value is.
Yeah, Andrew, anything to add?
Just that foundational point, I think, around the foundations being in place. I think if you were to rewind maybe 2-3 years ago and look to see kind of what what typically existed in an organization, and particularly manufacturing organization, that kind of minimum level of, there's probably good connectivity now. There's probably some decent Wi-Fi coverage across the shop floor, maybe in the warehouse, that kind of thing. There's probably some connected devices already in some way. Maybe, the one-off cell that maybe contains a particular investment that's been made in a particular CNC machine or something. That did need that route back home, that does actually feed performance data back to the manufacturer already. Those, I'd say, every organization, but the minimum level of maturity has probably gone up a couple of clicks, which means that we're in a better position than ever to capitalize on that, I would say.
Excellent. So moving on to the last question, because I think we covered the, how do we help to plan, and I think it's basically understand what you want to achieve and starting to think about how you could get data from something to help you with that. Culture, as Andrew's mentioned a couple of times, can be an inhibitor in technology adoption. There can be the fear of people on the floor, that they're going to be replaced by the machines, that actually in most cases in this space, it's actually an enabler to help with worker safety, with efficiencies, so on and so forth, as well as the progression of automation and autonomy. How do we help enable the culture to adopt the technology and see the value? Because quite often, with businesses, system integrators, ISVs, so on and so forth, we become very much technology driven, but actually, and we forget about the personas. And Ian, I thought it was fantastic that you mentioned this earlier about the personas here of who's going to be impacted by it, that really thinking about it from a human approach. So how do we help drive that sort of thought process with buyers? Andrew, we'll go with you first, if you don't mind.
Sure. I guess might be simple, but I guess I'd say engage and involve people. Don't forget that your newest apprentice might be the IoT guru in your business. You got to remember that a lot of these tools and techniques are now commonplace, particularly in home automation and in home tinkering around with stuff. So I think remember that this is no longer the domain of your IT team's sort of siloed knowledge base. It's blown wide open, which is why this is quite exciting, I suspect. You've got people who teach them how to fish, I suppose, rather than fish for them. You've got people with all this potential ideas, and particularly with low code solutions and places where you don't need to be a developer to plug some stuff together. You can do some quite cool engagement pieces where they've seen it in alternative factories, that their friend that works at another organization's talked to them about it in the pub. There's all sorts of stuff there that you can really tap into, and I think setting that aspirational level at the high level, so top down at this point around, we welcome these ideas and challenges, and it doesn't threaten your position here. I think that's really important, and I think the maturity of the jobs from, if you've spent all day looking at a machine to see if it stops, that's a really bad use of your time. If you could come up, you're the person there that could really come up with if we could only have something that sat and looked at this and told me when that light went red via a push notification to my tablet that I'm walking around the shop floor, and I could be away doing all sorts of other useful stuff. That idea is going to come from people within your business, not from the IT guys in the back office.
Ian?
Yeah, I mean, it's what causes a project to fail, particularly where technology is concerned. Usually it comes down to people, processes, and technology. But we always forget that they are the fundamental points. Are the people ready? Have they got the skills? Mm-hmm. Take them with you on a journey. I totally agree with what Andrew was saying there. You've got to bring them with you. I think things like design thinking, where you're doing your empathy mapping and persona mapping, etc., is a really, really good way of bringing people with you on that process, and that can be, involving suppliers, customers, whoever in that journey. So keep people on board, but also think as well that success doesn't just come through the implementation of a solution. Success comes through the adoption of that solution. So how would you maintain it going forward? How are you going to administer all these sensors, particularly as your sensors start growing in volume? Would you have the skills? Have you got the processes in place? And the people on the ground usually are pretty shrewd when it comes to all the newfangled fancy technologies that go into organizations. They'll soon spot, say, well, okay, that's brilliant now, but who's going to look after it? How are you going to maintain it? How are you going to maintain all the firmware updates, the security protocols, the passwords for all these things? There's a whole ream of things that need to be considered, and the more people that you can get involved in those kind of discussions, particularly around design thinking and what have you, the better place you're going to be, and the happier, the more kind of understanding people will be, and probably enthusiastic about the solution, because they'll understand why you're moving in that direction and what the benefits are.
Yeah, I think one of the things from the experience of working in manufacturing that I've had over the past few years was actually when we were collecting the data at the first stage, and then sharing that with the teams that we were initially working with, and we were like, so what does this mean? Why is that doing that at that particular point, and so on and so forth. Interestingly, quite often the answer was not sure. I'll ask John, or I'll ask Frank, or I'll ask Sarah. That then we started to bring in a bit more of a wider scope into the project, that we then started to learn from that and replicate it with other businesses, that actually bring the people in from the floor. They could actually tell us what that data meant much quicker, and it was really interesting. You building vision solutions as well, that they could actually identify things way quicker than, because they stood there day in day out. They are the specialists of those areas, that when they started to go through that journey, they became really animated and supportive of the project.
But what we've got to be clear of is that these solutions are not there to replace skills or operations or people. What they're there is they're there to augment capabilities, to kind of help what we do. So what you find is that the boring, mundane stuff, the skilled people that are on the ground can actually get more insight and more understanding to help with their operations, rather than just push them out of the equation.
Yeah, we've got a question popped up, and I don't know if any of us can answer it. I know I couldn't, but we've got Dick Wallace. Hi, Dick. Why are nearly all defence contracts near or actual failures? I don't know if either of you can answer that one.
How much time have we got?
Honestly, 3 minutes.
I think there's a few books out on that. No, it's not an easy answer.
Yeah, I didn't think it would be. Dick, maybe if you'd like, drop me a line, info@iotnorth.uk, and we can have a chat about that and maybe make a show out of it. I don't know. Always open to have a chat. If you would like to have a chat on one of our shows, share your insights, your thoughts, as I said, please do email info@iotnorth.uk. We are here as an open forum for you to talk. It's your platform or a community here at IoT North. Guys, I think that's a good point to thank you very much for your time today. Fantastic insight as all. What I'm going to ask you and catch you on the spot is, what is the one big thing that you would get customers to really think about as an initial thing? Start with you, Ian.
Think about what you want to be. What does success look like, and what scares you? I think the hopes and fears. That's people forget what success looks like.
Yeah, good answer. I like that one. Andrew?
I'll add to that rather than say instead of, because I agree with
sure.
that. I think it's just an area quite close, I suppose, would be, really think about, where is that attention sapping pain in your business right now, in your plant or in your customer base or wherever it might be. But what is that pain point? And then apply that. And how might technology help with that? I don't know, even if you don't know, seek out help, drop me a message, whatever it might be. But how could we solve just that one specific pain point that you're talking about? Because actually, I think from that point you'll start to unlock some of the thinking, and you'll get that momentum that you need to sort of start to do some of this stuff.
Yeah, brilliant. I agree. So that's Andrew's LinkedIn profile link there on just underneath him, and we have Ian's. That's not Ian's. This is Ian's on LinkedIn as well. So if you'd like to reach out to the guys and connect with them, by all means, please do. Andrew, you've just recently done a report, haven't you, in this manufacturing space, and spent quite a few months speaking with business leaders across numerous businesses in this space. Would you like to just share with everybody a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think I touched on it last time I was here. We were mid-flight with it all, but we've basically pulled together a Build a Better Manufacturer report. So we had a number of manufacturers, whose logos you'll see on there, come along to a forum, and these were people who not necessarily worked in a technology capacity. They often were production or in senior management. And we really focused on what success stories have they already done that's in the theme of Industry 4, kind of what challenges do they face, and so what jargon did they really need explaining. And we basically did a number of sessions that focused on that repeating agenda, solving a few problems, giving some suggestions, and also hearing some of the examples. Where have you seen AI improve yield, for example? So that's all in that report. So if anybody would like to read that, it's free to consume. But just drop me a message and I'll send you that back across.
Brilliant. We've got one last question. This is the first time I've allowed a lunchtime show to overrun because I think it's relevant, to be quite honest. It's a big subject. We should probably do an hour-long show on this one, which we do monthly, which we have Amy talking AMEY PLC. They're going to be sharing some of the projects they're working on and doing a call to action for help as well. So catch that on August 3rd at 6 p.m. UK time. Prasad, I'm in Canada and I'm trying to approach the US market. Do you think there is an actual difference between UK, Europe versus North America? How should we approach the two markets? Ian, I'll go to you.
Yeah, there's definitely a difference. What those are, it's hard to say, but legislative differences as well, particularly around data usage. When we go into Europe, obviously we've got GDPR, which can like kind of put constraints on how we use data. Constraints is probably a bad word there. Or controls. It protects our data. You've got different rules over in the States. But culturally as well, I think, you go to Silicon Valley and I think there's a lot more acceptance of technology. Whereas, culturally in places like Europe, you might not find such acceptance. Every market's different. Every market specializes in different things. So, you need to understand that market. You understand what ticks the boxes for those different areas.
Andrew, anything to add?
Yeah, I would just add that I guess it's probably more complex than that, even Prasad, I'm afraid to say, in that I guess within Europe and even within the UK, there are a number of cultural dynamics that you need to be mindful of and aware of. And it's part and parcel why we have a sort of a regional based approach to how we've grown so far. We know that it's different to run a business in London than it is to run one in Glasgow, and we know it's different in Sydney. So I suppose, sorry if that makes your question harder, but I suppose yes, and it's even a little bit more complicated than that, particularly between differences within Europe as well.
Yeah, I'd agree. That's the same as my experience as well. Sometimes you can strike. Look, verticals are such difference as well. Manufacturing, I think there's a bit of a culture change going. Is what I'm seeing in manufacturing. They are starting to be much more open to technology. And I think, as I mentioned at the beginning of the show, the pandemic, where they've realised that actually, if they had that remote connectivity, predictive maintenance, so on and so forth, they may have been able to keep on going more sustainably than what they had over the past year and a bit. On that note, we've well and truly overrun. Ian, Andrew, thank you very much for your time today. It's always an absolute pleasure and having you on. And if, as I mentioned, we have the forum.iotnorth.uk. If you'd like to continue the conversation, jump on there, register, create the topic, and let's have a conversation. Also, if you have a solution, IoT solution that you would like to share, let's communicate this in a very clear and concise way as a use case with a good value proposition, talking about the value. And you can put that on iotnorth.uk/marketplace, as it states below here. And it's free to use. And we'll then promote that across our network and our social presence as well. Thanks very much, guys. Really appreciate it. By the way, guys, the stuff you're putting in the private chat doesn't go onto the socials.
Technology fail. It happens to the best of us.
I'll tell you what, I'll do it for you. So there's that one. And this is from Ian.
You're going to include my typo in there, aren't you, Paul?
Oh no, I'll leave the tanks there.
It's the defense. It's the defense question. Thanks everyone. He says. Thanks for everyone.
On that note, have a great week. Thanks very much, guys. And we'll be announcing the show for next week very soon. Take care. Bye.
Cheers.
Thanks.